Speeding. 2 on the bounce. Arm you, I pray you, to this speedy voyage, for we will fetters put upon this fear which now goes too free-footed. Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 3. On an unseasonably warm afternoon in October, Eric Sellars and Annette Ridgeway sat at a corner table in the Food for Thought Cafe, the student-run eatery in the Smith Memorial Student Union on the campus at Portland State University. Eric was wearing baggy canvas trousers and a t-shirt with a rock band logo on it. Annette was wearing a green wool pullover blouse and jeans, and both of them were wearing the obligatory American baseball caps on their heads. They had double lattes, small plates of politically correct vegetarian quiche, and open books in front of them. They looked for all the world like a couple of college kids on a normal snack and study date. In actual fact, they were studying their fellow students. Although full-fledged volunteers with a company, little of their work for the NVA had so far involved hands-on active service. Annette's brief Lorelei stint as Mary Jones and the subsequent interrogation of Dawson Zucchino were as close as they had personally gotten so far to the wet work, other than when they had dispatched the late and unlamented Lucius Flammus. Most of their activity for the Army, as the rebellion in the Northwest entered its 4th year, consisted of intelligence gathering and surveillance, as well as a few special sabotage and monkey-wrenching assignments. For example, they had used the school's computers and a black student's password to upload a series of viruses into the IT systems at places like the Oregonian, the local IRS office, the Portland Public School System, and even one database they were able to access at the Fear Justice Center itself. Because their privileged status tended to give the two of them access to places, people, and events on a level of society denied to other volunteers, Tom and Becky had proven to be an invaluable asset not only to their original company commander and now 1st Brigade Commandant Billy Jackson, but also to Oscar in the 3rd Section. Jackson had recently succeeded to the commandant's slot when Tommy Coyle had gone over to 2nd Brigade following the death of Harry Hannon in a gun battle at a Fatpo checkpoint 6 weeks before. The new A Company CO was Lieutenant Jimmy Wingo, just returned from the successful Operation We Are Not Amused down in Los Angeles. Portland State was one of the few full-blown radical left-wing campuses remaining in the Northwest, with such appurtenances as an African American Students Union, a Hispanic Students Association, and functioning chapters of Anti-Racist Action and the Gay and Lesbian Alliance. In most other parts of the homeland, these groups had withered away on campus and elsewhere for lack of participation, as the NVA either rubbed out their participants or their members saw the handwriting on the wall and relocated to sunnier and less hostile climes. But Portland State was right in the middle of a city saturated with Zog police, Fatpo, and private security, and surrounded by a still significant urban minority population as muds and faggots fled from other areas of the Northwest to cower and rage impotently in Portland from behind the cover of the Fatpo guns. Up in Washington, the Puget Sound area was much larger and more spread out and contained more volunteers, and so Seattle and environs had been very largely cleaned up by now and was barely 1% non-white. Portland was far more concentrated and densely populated, and therefore easier for the regime to lock down with a concentration of men and firepower. It was difficult to believe that not 30 miles to the west one entered the 3rd Battalion's bandit country, a liberated zone where not a dark skin or a federal badge was to be seen. But Portland itself remained a left liberal stronghold, one of the few real bastions of government support remaining in the Northwest, and Portland State University was a hotbed of political correctness and anti-racist hysteria. Eric and Annette had spent their freshman year in summer school tracking all of this activity, identifying the ringleaders and major players, clocking their movements, cataloging their habits and known associates, watching everyone from the faculty and the student body on down to the custodial staff and numerous rent-a-cops on the security force, one of whom was also a Northwest volunteer. Eric and Annette had no idea who their comrade on the security staff was. They had an email address and a series of codes, and nothing more. They were to make contact only in the event they needed somehow to disable or blindside the security cameras and other school surveillance systems that followed the students everywhere they went. Eric would send an email through a special connection on his wireless laptop, using both coded content and an NVA-designed encryption system, which everyone hoped like hell the Federals were either unaware of or couldn't break if they were. Tom and Becky described what they needed done and when, and within a few hours whoever it was would get back to them giving them a yay or nay as to whether or not it could be done. Whoever was on the other end was presumably as ignorant of their identities as they were of his or hers. This was how they had twice managed to take down the electronic surveillance and disable certain alarms long enough for an EOD delivery team to get onto campus and plant two small but powerful bombs. One was in the administration building, in the office of the Dean of Diversity, an East Indian with a doctorate in multicultural studies named Patel. The WOG opened his desk drawer one morning and a stick of C4 blew him through his own bulletproof picture window and onto the quad below. The second device, disguised as an orange traffic bollard, had detonated on the exit ramp in parking building number 1, killing the director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, his driver, and 2 of his U.S. Marshal bodyguards. They were leaving campus after a Careers Day presentation wherein he was attempting to recruit gay and minority personnel for the many new facilities that were opening in places like Nevada and North Dakota, especially the mass relocation camps that now receive the populations of entire small towns in the Northwest, whose loyalty to the United States was considered suspect. The feds were especially looking for gay prison guards. Historically speaking, homosexual sadists have always been the worst and most cruel torturers. The Tom and Becky duo had also managed to set up over a dozen of their teachers and classmates for NVA hits and punishment beatings, mostly off campus, but 2 that took place on the grounds. They had repeatedly volunteered to do these jobs themselves, but Jackson always vetoed it. "No, you 2 are far too valuable operating above ground for us to risk blowing your cover," he told them. "I will give you as much advance warning as I can before any operation you have assisted with, so that you can make sure you are both very visible and you can account for every second of your time if you're questioned. I don't want you caught." Annette and Eric knew they weren't just valuable as spies on a lefty but minor college campus. They provided a special window for the NVA into the world of the West Coast's political and corporate power elite, simply by keeping their ears open around the house and socializing with their parents' set whenever the opportunity offered. Both still hung in their families wealthy and well-connected circles and passed on volumes of information from those circles, and also on some occasions the names of some of their friends and acquaintances and their parents. Friends and acquaintances who showed signs of being dangerously fed up with the way America was going and who in their opinion might possibly be approachable by the NVA. The 2 young people been compelled to become actors, on stage at all times, and they had managed to convince the college authorities, their fellow students, and so far, the small army of FBI and fatpo snitches on campus that their minds were neat and clean and free of any taint of wicked racism or doubt. They each took several diversity and minority-related classes. Their test scores were always perfect, and their exam papers pure PC orthodoxy. Both of them had been approached by the campus wing of the Young Democrats, and they had joined with alacrity. Eric was now head of the YD debating team, and Annette was the chapter secretary with access and control of all the files and membership info, all of which she passed on to Oscar as soon as she got it. Their membership in the YDs and their impeccable family backgrounds got them invitations to local meetings, parties, and functions, and also got them drafted to serve as waiters and ushers at the governor's New Year's Eve ball, into which Eric was able to smuggle a mini camcorder and record all kinds of interesting people and snippets of conversation. Periodically, Jackson would question them, politely but comprehensively, as to how they were holding up under the stress. "To be frank, sir, we're thriving on it," Eric confessed to him. "We know we're doing something of historical importance. We have a purpose in life, which almost none of these other kids have. As corny as this sounds, we feel alive, like we're hitting on all cylinders." "A purpose in life will have that effect, yes," Jackson replied. There was only one thing that worried them now they were entering their sophomore year. Their monogamous, heterosexual, and racially homogeneous relationship was becoming a bit noticeable, and they were both under pressure to demonstrate their commitment to diversity in the traditional American collegiate way, through casual and promiscuous sexual behavior. Their monogamous, heterosexual, and racially homogeneous relationship was becoming a bit noticeable, and they were both under pressure to demonstrate their commitment to diversity in the traditional American collegiate way through casual and promiscuous sexual behavior. Especially Annette. "They're starting to call us Brad and Janet, after the white bread couple in the Rocky Horror Picture Show," she told Wingo in their first briefing with him as company commander early in September. The two of them met with Wingo and Kiki McGee in the kitchen of a private home in McMinnville. They could hear odd rattling and cranking noises from the basement, and once a man they'd never seen entered the room and handed Wingo several sheets of 11x17 paper with large block printing on it, which he looked over, nodded, and handed back. Apparently the party had a good old-fashioned underground illegal printing press going downstairs. "And how many slimy kikes have come on to you wanting to be your Dr. Frankenfurter?" asked Kiki. "A few," admitted Annette. "And a few wogs as well, Bengalis or Indonesians or something of the kind. They really go for blondes. With me it's high yellow mulatto chicks and this one goddamned faggot," muttered Eric. "I'm scared I'm going to lose my temper and slug him." "Make sure you don't," ordered Wingo. "That's a hate crime in itself, and even if you can talk your way out of formal charges, it will draw the kind of attention that will make you useless as an undercover. You know the drill. One single offhand remark, one small action that indicates to the people watching you that someone's mind is not completely under control, and they start a file on you. What worries me is that your refusal to act like dogs in heat may draw the same kind of attention. It's a break in the pattern for proper American white kids of your age, and one so unusual as to be noticeable to someone who is paying attention, and you'd better believe somebody on that campus is on the FBI or FATPO payroll and they're paying attention. From their point of view, you should both be fucking anything with a pulse, drinking yourselves paralytic every night, and smoking, injecting, or snorting every known drug into your systems. Eventually some government snoop is going to wonder why you're not, and mention you to someone somewhere in the security apparatus. I want you both to keep your antennae on high reception, and let me know the minute you pick up on anything at all that indicates that you are under surveillance or investigation, however quietly. In the meantime, keep on with what you're doing. By the way, the word has gotten around, and I've been asked by Captain Hatfield and the boys from 3rd Bat to convey their thanks for the heads-up back in June, and a 21-gun salute to the both of you, especially Comrade Becky. Now they sat at the table in the food for thought, quietly noting the comings and goings of their classmates. Eric had his laptop open to WordPad, and occasionally he made a cryptic note on thermodynamics that was in fact a reminder to himself to do something that had nothing to do with heat resistance. "There's Keisha Spies," Annette said quietly, glancing in the direction of a black female student who was vocal in a number of left-wing causes. "I've been keeping my ears open to pick up on anything about her, but apparently she never sets foot anywhere off campus," said Eric, also sotto voce. "The niggers are finally learning," said Annette. "God knows it's taken them long enough. We must have at least 400 of them hiding here. Thank God you and I are still living at home and we're not here in the dorms all night. I keep having this fantasy of a big midnight raid with about 20 of the boys, locked and loaded, just going through the quad and through the dorms blasting." Eric nodded. "I tried to interest the new CO in my old idea of dropping some chug-chugs or whiz-bangs on this shithole one midnight, but I got the same answer. Even after dark, there are too many white kids around, too much potential for collateral damage." "He hasn't seen some of these so-called white kids," muttered Annette. "These are even worse wiggers than some of those dweebs we had at Ashdown. Lottie Rosenfeld, over there by the salad bar. Miss Bull Dyke of PSU. I'm surprised she hasn't tried to hit on you." "She did, I think," said Annette. "Once in BA class, once here, and once in Young Dems. I dumbed up and just plain refused to follow where she was leading, hoping she'd get the message. She must think I really am stupid." "This is America. One doesn't dumb up, one dumbs down," pointed out Eric, "if it's possible to dumb any downer. I can't believe that they're not teaching logarithms in math classes here. They claim it would be unfair to minority students because logs are an artificial construction of dead white European males. Apparently math can be racist too. I wouldn't want to drive over any bridge these coons and wogs design or fly in any airplane they've worked on, that's for sure. What's Lottie been up to lately?" "Putting the moves on that little freshman girl Wendy Sykes. and getting her pissed off enough so I think Wendy might be approachable. I wish they'd let us do some recruiting ourselves. Lottie's also on the YD Gay and Lesbian Committee, and they're throwing some kind of social at the convention center for Thanksgiving. That might be a good place for her to meet up with our tattooed lady friend and her main man. Something like that is going to be guarded like Fort Knox, maybe even a deliberate fatty trap using the pervs as bait, said Eric. But yeah, it needs passing along, especially now that Kat Lockhart is back in town. See if you can worm the details out of Lottie without getting groped, will you? She won't give me the time of day. There's Dr. Thompson. Did we ever confirm if he was banging that Sheila girl from his graduate student class? Yeah, but she's old enough and she's white. Still, his wife might not appreciate it, and it could be used to put pressure on him if we ever need anything from him, said Eric. Oh, before I forget, I noticed they've got a new beverage vendor in here, a Pepsi distributor from Corvallis according to the truck. Wonder what happened to the old one? I can ask Mercy Prouse. She works in the kitchen, replied Annette, and in comes Dean Piniella. Wonder how bad he's sweating now he's handling Dr. Patel's old diversity portfolio? Asked Eric with a soft chuckle. I hear he's so scared to step off campus he's sleeping on a cot in his office, Annette told him. Any ideas on how we can get the card for the Monkoid Student Union building? I'd like to see about giving those bubble lips a wake-up call. We might not need to, said Annette. I was going by there yesterday and I saw one of the basement windows that was open a crack. I'm sure we could get it open and toss a package inside, or one of the comrades could, but the trouble is there's a damn CCTV camera panning right in front of it. We can ask our friend to take it out once we've worked out all the other details, but I know he has to be careful. This has happened twice now, and I'm sure somebody's wondering why the security cams seem to fail exactly at the crucial moment. We better scoot, said Eric, looking at his watch. We've got young Dems upstairs at 4. A couple of state legislators are supposed to be speaking and telling us all about the wonders of democracy, plus dangling a few minimum wage internships in Salem for next summer in front of us. Bet you get one of those offers and I don't. Bet you get offered one by the Republicans and I don't, riposted Annette. Let's see what kind of a line we can get on them and check out how thoroughly they're guarded. They're supposed to be using mercs now, because the state police are spread too thin. State hacks should be fairly low on the totem pole, and easier targets for us than the really big politicians. He picked up the check. I'll get this. Annette went out into the huge main lobby, glancing back at Eric where he stood at the cash register. Just outside the door of the Food for Thought cafe hung a huge cork bulletin board with all the usual kinds of notices and flyers on it, for everything from nightclubs to special classes, apartments to share, items for sale, etc. She was studying the junk on the bulletin board when someone grabbed her from behind, twisted her left arm viciously behind her back, and slammed her into the wall. She felt the cold metal of a gun barrel pressing into her neck just below her right ear. Hello again, Mary, said a sibilant voice behind her. What? Who are you? What the fuck are you doing? Gasped Annette. You remember me, Mary, or whatever your name is, said the voice. We met briefly last June, outside the Benson Hotel. You were with Dawson Zucchino, who subsequently disappeared for several days and then showed up down in Los Angeles with a wild story about how he had been kidnapped and tortured by godless neo-Nazis. I was supposed to be guarding Zucchino. You embarrassed me, Mary. I don't like being embarrassed by Nazi whores. The man whirled her around, held his Glock under her chin, and pinned her to the wall with his knee in an obscene embrace, while with his free hand he ripped off her student ID from the chain around her neck. It was Perry, the security contractor who had interrupted her and Zucchino on the sidewalk that night. He was wearing a blue nylon jacket and baseball cap with the Blackwater logo on them. The Blackwater insignia as familiar and fearful to all the students as Fat Po or police uniform, and Annette saw to her anger and her shame that everyone else in the student union was simply glancing their way, turning their heads and walking on rapidly, all of them pretending they saw nothing. The exceptions were a number of black and brown students who were standing and watching in sullen silence, slowly comprehending that some sort of policeman might have detected one of the evil white racists right here in their midst. None of the white kids dared to interfere and possibly be branded an evil racist as well. The building began rapidly emptying out of all its white occupants, terrified of becoming involved. "The Lord seems to have decided to give me another crack at you, Annette," Perry said, studying the card and then staring into her eyes with loathing. "Please take that gun out of my face. I don't know who you think I am, but you've got the wrong person," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. She didn't dare look back into the cafe to see where Eric was, or if Eric saw her. "I don't think so," said Perry. "I never forget a face, even if the hair and the clothes are different. I'm on the security detail for some members of the state legislature who are speaking here this afternoon. I was doing a preliminary check of the area. I saw you standing here and I recognized you immediately. You're an NVA slut and you're under arrest." "On what charge? You can't arrest me. You're not a cop," yelled Annette. "Don't be stupid. I'm a paid employee of the state, and since September 11th, 2001, I can do any damned thing I want." Annette never saw Eric come out the door of the cafe, but all of a sudden he was behind the mercenary, lifting his closed laptop high. Annette twisted to her right and managed to knock the pistol away from her face with her left hand. Eric smashed the computer notebook down in an overhead chop that would have broken the man's neck if it had connected, but someone in the standing group of black and brown spectators yelled, "Look out behind you, man!" And Perry turned just before the laptop crashed into his head. The blow was a glancing one, but it was delivered with all Eric's strength. It knocked Perry to the floor and dazed him. The pistol clattered down to the floor and Eric dove for it, simultaneously tossing the laptop to Annette. It had things on it that were none of Zog's business. Eric came up with the gun in his hand and whirled. He and Annette found themselves facing a group of about 40 other students, all black or Asian, or some variation of mud. They were starting to move forward menacingly in clumps. "You a NVA bitch?" demanded one huge Samoan threateningly, apparently undeterred by the gun in Eric's hand, or else simply too stupid for it to register. Eric cocked the pistol, raised it, and shot the Samoan dead center. He ooged and arged and crumpled, bleeding to the floor. All the others screamed and trampled out of the building, along with everyone who hadn't snuck out already when they saw the trouble starting. Annette saw Perry staggering to his feet and tugging a stainless steel snub-nosed revolver from his ankle holster. "Eric!" she screamed. Eric turned and shot the Blackwater thug right between the eyes at close range. Apparently Perry loaded his weapon with hollow points, or fulminate-capped exploding bullets, because the entire back of his head was blown out. He stood wobbling for a second or two, his face a bloody mask, and they could literally see daylight and the wall beyond through his eye sockets. Then he collapsed as well, and they were standing there alone with two corpses. They looked up and saw the red lights glowing on at least two closed-circuit television cameras. No doubt they had recorded the whole thing. "I don't think we can talk our way out of this one," said Annette. "What do we do now?" "Running might be a good idea," suggested Eric. "Yes," agreed Annette. "Run where?" "Not out any of the doors," he said. "Sky Bridge to the School of Ed first. Grab Soldier Boy's holdout piece." Annette picked up and stuck it in her purse, and Eric pulled 2 extra ammunition clips out of the pouches on Perry's belt and stuck them in his back pockets. While they were running upstairs, he called back, "Anything in the car that you absolutely for sure have to recover?" "No," she said. "Okay, I think we'd better do this on foot. A car will be too easy for them to spot and track, and there's too much traffic downtown. We could get boxed in too easy. Let's see if we can make it to 9th Avenue, then downtown, then onto a Trimit or Max station to our E&E point." Eric reached up and forcibly ripped one of the upstairs security cameras off the wall. "Now they'll have to guess which way we've gone." He stuck the gun under his shirt and they strolled calmly hand in hand over the glassed-in archway connecting the buildings, and then down through the School of Education, Annette with the laptop on a strap over her shoulder. They managed to leave by a side exit and get out onto the sidewalks campus. They could hear the sounds of a crowd and now police sirens behind them. "Procedure says we should split up," said Annette in a low voice. "I know," replied Eric. "To hell with procedure. I'm not leaving you. Unless our unknown comrade has somehow managed to give us a hand we don't know about, they're probably tracking us on the cameras," said Eric. "We need to get off campus and away from those things. Head for 9th Avenue and Market Street. There's a security shack at the gate there. Yeah, but I know a way through the hedge." They were able to crawl through and jump down onto 9th. Traffic wasn't too bad, the afternoon rush not having begun yet, but it was sufficiently crowded on the street and the sidewalk so that they could blend in. They jaywalked across the street, turned left on Park, and then right on Market. Eric pulled out his cell phone and dialed. After several rings, Jimmy Wingo's voice answered. "Yeah? Is this Sliders Bar and Grill?" asked Eric. "Yeah, that's right. You still got Texas tea?" Wingo was silent for a moment. "Yeah, we got it. You want to try some?" "Sure do. Got a real hankering for it." "What time do you close?" asked Eric. 1 in the morning. Call ahead to book a table." "I will. See you later." Eric closed his phone. "Okay, he wants us to go to location 1, not our own E&D point, which means they'll retrieve us. That would be... Shit! I can never remember all this stuff." "The downtown post office, Hoyt Street side," Annette reminded him. "Thanks. Anyway, he wants another call when we're there." "You know they got the whole thing on digital from those damned cameras in the student union," said Annette calmly. "That's it, we're toast. Eric Sellars and Annette Ridgeway are toast," said Eric. "Tom and Becky will live on to fight another day. Many another day." Not if we get spotted on the street," said Annette. "They've got to have an APB out on us by now, with a description of what we're wearing. They were passing by a trendy and overpriced boutique." "Feel like stopping for a little shopping?" suggested Eric. "We use our plastic in here. They'll eventually pick up on it, but it may buy us some time." 20 minutes later, they emerged from the store clad in new outerwear. Eric was clad in a warm shepherd's coat and Annette a brown corduroy jacket. They had lost the baseball caps. Eric now boasted a black cowboy hat and Annette a dark worsted pork pie cap. They continued walking on down Broadway. There were sirens screaming somewhere, and twice the two of them turned and looked into a store window while a Fatpo armored truck rumbled by. It was starting to grow dark now, and the neons and streetlights were blinking on in the murky dusk. They were walking by a yuppie fern bar with a large plasma TV on over the bar when Annette glanced up. "Oh, shit," she exclaimed, grabbing Eric's arm. He turned, and through the window, on the television screen inside, he saw a large and distorted, grainy picture of the entrance to the Food for Thought Cafe. It was CNN. Perry was just slamming Annette into the wall and poking the gun into her neck. Along with all the patrons in the bar, they watched while Eric attacked the Blackwater goon with his laptop, then shot the Samoan, then shot the goon. They couldn't hear any sound, but didn't need to. Boy, that was quick. They must be after us hot and heavy to get it on the air so fast. "Us 1st Brigade boys are really photogenic," said Eric dryly. "First the CO and those guys on Flanders Street, then Kat leading the band on Oscar night. Then Cap Hatfield and the Wild Bunch on Sunset Beach, now us. We're giving the media all kinds of exciting footage. Hopefully these new threads will disguise us until we can get picked up," said Annette. They turned and walked on. "Well, this is it. Our old lives are gone now. Any regrets?" "Not a one," Eric told her. "Me neither, Annette. I want you to listen to me and not give me any feminist bullshit or backtalk," Eric continued, quietly but firmly. "If things break bad, I will hold off whoever it is and draw them off onto me. I want you to run like hell, and don't look back. You did pretty good with nothing but this laptop back there in the student union," she reminded him. "I was lucky, and there was only one of them. We won't have that kind of luck again. I mean it, Annette. You're a woman, and your life is more important to the future of the race than mine, as pompous as that sounds. You can give life to those who will come after. Like you said, we're supposed to split up anyway. If anything goes down, I want you to run. I'll be fine. I can take care of myself." "Fuck you," said Annette, tears rolling down her cheeks. "No. And any babies I have are going to be yours." "There won't be any meaning to any of this if you die," said Eric gently. "There won't be any meaning to any of it if our race dies. Now be quiet. We're supposed to be escaping and evading." They walked on in silence for the rest of the way and made it to Hoyt Street. Dark was falling rapidly now. It was getting chilly, and they were glad of the new coats they had gotten. Their old ones were back in the car in the parking deck at PSU, probably being pawed over by now by all kinds of cops and fatties. Eric dialed again. "Hey, I'd like a table for tonight." "I'm kind of busy right now," said Wingo. "I've got a busted hosepipe in the kitchen. Can you call back in 5? "Sure." Eric closed his phone. "ETA in about 5 minutes. Authentication is hosepipe, in case it's someone we don't know, but my guess is they'll probably send Levon." "Is she back?" asked Annette. "Yeah. Don't know where she went, but I imagine she needed some time off after sunset." You heard what they did to her man in prison? Yeah, said Annette bitterly. How many of our guys did they murder in retaliation for the wild bunch embarrassing them like that? Near as we can figure about 40, before the stink got too bad even for Hillary and she called it off, said Eric. Well, there's one silver lining, although I'd never say that to Levon. How can there be a silver lining to 40 men being dragged from their cells in the middle of the night, strapped onto a gurney and injected with poison before they even know what's happening? Demanded Annette. We know we're going to win now, said Eric confidently. Any government that does things like that is weak, terrified, in a panic. They're losing and they know it, and so they're just lashing out in all directions. They've lost their cool. We've still got ours. We're going to win. They were standing under a streetlight when a dark maroon Lincoln town car pulled up beside them. The power window rolled down, and Ray Ridgway looked out at them. "Hi, kids," he called out cheerfully. "Just happened to be driving by and saw you standing there. Almost didn't recognize you with those jackets on. Must be new. Where's the Lexus? Hop in, I'll drive you back to campus." "Oh God, no," whispered Annette to herself. "What will we do if he's still here when Vonnie or whoever shows up to collect us?" whispered Eric. "Come on," she said. They went over to the car, and Annette leaned down to speak to her father. "Dad," she said softly, "I'm going to have to ask you to do something for me now. Please listen to me. Don't say anything, just do it. I want you to roll up the window and go home, and do it without any questions or argument. I have to ask you to trust me and believe me when I say that it has to be this way. Eric and I are all right. Someone's coming for us." "Yes, I know," said Ridgway. "I'm coming for you. Oh, I forgot. I'm supposed to say hosepipe. I'm not too familiar with this street-level stuff, I'm afraid." Eric and Annette stared at one another, their mouths open. "Get in, please," said Ray. "We're holding up traffic." Annette and Eric got in the back. The Lincoln pulled away, and they rode in silence for a minute or so. "Well, this is weird," said Eric eventually. "How long have you known? I mean, when did you—" asked Annette, not knowing where to begin. "A few months after you two," said Ridgway. "After Flanders Street, as I recall. As to how long I've known, you don't really think I'm so unobservant as not to notice when one of my handguns goes missing, do you? First, I want you to tell me what happened today, exactly. Don't worry, this is business. I've got a couple of wanted volunteers in my car and I need to know just how hot you are." "Pretty damned hot," Annette told him. "Obviously, you haven't checked CNN in the past 30 minutes. She took a deep breath and filled her father in on the events of the afternoon. She told him the Blackwater thug Perry had recognized her from a previous mission, but she did not say what the mission was or what she had been doing, and her father impressed her by not pressing for details. He had picked up the volunteer code right enough. When she had finished, she asked, "How did you hook up with the Army? I knew you'd killed Flamis. The only thing I didn't know was whether or not you'd actually succeeded in finding and joining the NVA," said Ray. "I considered simply confronting you both, since I knew both of you would be involved, but I didn't know what I'd do if you simply lied to me and denied it. I had no proof, after all, and that might have spooked you and driven you away, out of the house and away from home to somewhere I could do even less to protect you. After a while, I was pretty sure I saw signs that something was up. Your mother, and I assume Eric's folks as well, thought that when you two were out at all hours, you were just off canoodling somewhere like teenagers do. But that never quite gelled for me. You're both very serious young people, and I couldn't imagine you spending quite so much time on that part of your lives. No offense." "Well, we were canoodling some of the time," said Annette defensively. "No longer my concern since you turned 18, Ray told them. Anyway, I racked my brains trying to think of what to do. I was absolutely sure you were in the process of destroying your lives, but having already lost one daughter to this horror show we call a society, I had to be very careful about how I intervened, since I knew that one slip could make things infinitely worse. To make a long story short, I knew someone who knew someone else who knew someone else in turn. Multiply that by about 10 more relays and you get the idea. One evening I sat down in an undisclosed location and I had a long talk with one of the most fascinating and brilliant men I've ever met. A fellow named Henry Morehouse, also known as Red Morehouse, also known as Mr. Chips. Have you met him?" "We know the name," said Eric. "He's supposed to be close enough. Anyway, Red has the most incredible ability to look you right in the eye and say out loud things that you've been thinking all your life but never dared to speak. thoughts you hardly dared to acknowledge to yourself. I came to him to try and find out if my daughter and her boyfriend were involved with what I viewed as a gang of criminals. I stayed to listen, and to my own surprise, I ended up offering to help. I was then put in touch with another fascinating and brilliant man who goes by the name of Oscar. Now him, we know, admitted Annette. Yes, he told me. Annette noticed they were now on Highway 30 headed west and assumed they were going into bandit country. Oscar made me no promises, except that he would inform me if anything happened to either of you, and by then I accepted that, because I knew that's how it had to be. There's a war on, and winning it has to take precedence over personal considerations. It took actually meeting with these NVA men to show me who they were and what they were about, and to understand that you are now both adults and you're capable of making your own decisions. You have been an adult for a long time, of course, Annette. If your sister had lived, I doubt if she ever would have been, but as worried and as fearful as I was about you both, and still am, I realize that whether I like it or not, history has caught up with all of us, bitten us in the ass, and we're it. In a general way, sir, may I ask what your role in the Army is? Asked Eric Ray, turned off onto a side road. We're coming up on where the first fatty checkpoints usually start, he said casually. Annette still couldn't get over having her father smack in the middle of her and Eric's secret life. It was almost like seeing an elephant in church. As to what I do for the Army, he went on, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a lot of intelligence gathering, some of which I understand you two have actually been duplicating. But mostly, I am now working in one of the most little-known and yet in its own way vital aspects of any war or revolution, the economic side of things. Not just contacts and moving money, although some of that. I'm the first full-fledged banker to sign on, and they were overjoyed to get me. But actual economic planning for the future Northwest Republic to come. The Army Council is aware of the risks of too quick a victory, as odd as that may sound. They know that if all of a sudden the American authority collapses like it did in the former Soviet Union, they don't want to find themselves as a bunch of gunmen who only know how to pull triggers and rig detonators, sitting on top of a situation they don't know how to control or work with. It is possible to win the war and lose the peace. They mean to hit the ground running so they can actually build a functioning state, a viable economy, and a sane and stable society based on real productivity and economic sanity. That's a mighty tall order, and I have to say, I'm loving every minute of it. Would you have joined if it hadn't been for Jan? Asked Annette. Count on you to cut right to the nub, chuckled her father. Yes, I think so, if the opportunity had offered. Annette, I don't have to tell you what Jan's death did to me and to your mother. But this isn't about avenging your sister. Although for a while I thought maybe it was. It's not about Jan. It's about me, about becoming the kind of man I should have become long ago. Remember a conversation we had in my den the night of the funeral, honey? When I was giving you that whole spiel about how you have to go along to get along, all that tripe? I sensed that I dropped in your estimation that night, and that ate at me, because I knew I should have diminished in your regard, that what I was saying was basically nothing more than the elaborate excuse of a coward. Someone who believes himself to be a coward is not a happy man, I can tell you. Then Flammus got his. I knew perfectly well that you two had done it, and I had to face the fact that a pair of 17-year-olds, as you were then, had shown me up, had done what I lacked the physical and moral courage to do. I can't undo the past or change the man I was, honey. But I can change the man I will be in the future, and I intend to. Have you said anything to Mom about either of us? Asked Annette. Oh, good God, no. Here we are. Annette didn't know what road they were on, but her father pulled the car into the driveway of a house with white weatherproof siding house and a concrete driveway. He parked and they got out. Ray walked up to the door and gave a series of knocks, and Lieutenant Jimmy Wingo opened the door. When they got into the living room, Oscar rose to greet them. I've been watching your television debut, he said, indicating the TV. One of the local stations was running the security camera footage from the student union again, and they all watched the short, violent episode play out. Ridgway's face expressionless as he watched one of Zion's dogs hurl his daughter up against a wall and point a loaded pistol at her head. Usually we want a full debriefing when something like this happens, but I'd say that film clip pretty much says it all. Anything to add? We're grateful for the retrieval, but we were a bit surprised when we saw who the driver was, said Eric, nodding at Ray Ridgway. How did he come to be there anyway, sir? Jim reported to me when you guys yelled Texas T. And I happened to be with Comrade Ridgeway Sr. going over a few things when the call came in, said Oscar. Technically, I suppose it was need to know, and he didn't need to know, but sometimes common decency has to trump procedure. So I told him you guys were in the wind, and he volunteered to make the recovery run. Do you need me any more tonight, Oscar? Asked Ray. No, we need to plot a new career path for our 2 recently unemployed comrades here, said Oscar. In view of your relationship, of course, you can sit in if you like. What I don't know, I can't tell, said Ray. I expect I'll find FBI or fatties or both at my house when I get back. Thank God my wife is out of town visiting her sister, although that probably means she's going to learn about Annette from seeing her on TV. That's bad. But better than if armed niggers in body armor simply kicked in the door without warning. I will, of course, be utterly shocked and appalled at the news of my daughter's wicked ways. But they may not buy it, and they might decide to take me to one of those cellars in the Justice Center for a little physical experimentation. Can't you pull him under as well, sir? Asked Annette in alarm. That's not possible, honey, said Ray. In order for me to be of any use to the movement, I must stay where I am. No one else can do what I'm doing right now. Don't worry, I'm sufficiently well connected so they'll tread lightly with me. I hope. But if I'm wrong and they do try to break me, I cannot know anything about your whereabouts or what you are doing. I would die before knowingly betraying you, but we all know these bastards have their dirty ways of getting anything out of anyone. I couldn't live with that. You'll be changing locations right away, Oscar? They'll be miles away before you get back to town, Ray, Oscar assured him. Actually, I was going to ask them if they would be interested in coming on board officially with 3rd Section. Lieutenant Wingo's scowl tells us he doesn't like us cherry-picking his best people. Few line companies do, but you 2 have shown a talent for the work, and we can use you in areas besides Portland, which will be too hot to hold you for a time. Well, this is it then, said Ray with a sigh. I don't know when I will be seeing either of you again, but I presume I need not tell you that you will both be in my thoughts and my prayers, always. He solemnly shook hands with Eric, then leaned over and kissed his daughter on the forehead. I'll do my best to help your mother through this, and if anything happens to either of us, Oscar here will get word to you. Mind how you go, comrades, he said gently.